I knew I need to start over.
What happened?
I thought there's no erasing.
Don't stop.
Don't you dare.
They won't
You
hear
can't
anything.
delete anything.
They won't hear anything.
Still.
I had my Max mic was selected.
Okay. I was really excited for you to screw up the intro and make you keep it.
We're in week. I just looked.
We're week 4.
Yeah, week 4.
Esther 7 and 8.
What happens?
So last week Esther just was begging to have a meeting with the king, and she went to meet with the king.
Do you think she
and
begged?
Haman. Well, I mean, she might not have begged, but she had to like wait in the hallway till he could find
She
her.
requested it.
Requested a meeting with the king, and
he likes her.
He likes her.
I think
yeah.
the remarkable was that she didn't have to beg. She thought she was going to have to.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
She thought she might die.
Yeah, because that was an option, and she hadn't seen the king in 30 days.
I've never had an interaction where I thought if I interact with this person, I might die.
No.
I don't think.
That's good. I think I probably have. Not like, yeah, just some strange people here and there.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
That's right.
yeah, this might not have been a good thing.
Yeah. You
But-
give rides.
I have given rides before, and
Hitchhiker?
Hitchhiking is over.
there was one a long time ago, but she was a young girl,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
it was still weird, but like I don't know.
It
Poor
was
girl.
still.
That poor girl, she
Weird.
needed a ride home. So, but okay, so Esther went to see the king, requested a meeting, and then they had a banquet with the king and Haman.
That's what
Haman's
she
his
wanted.
second in
He
command.
said, "You can have anything you want up to half of my kingdom," which
Yeah.
was the most ridiculous offer.
Yeah,
Because
that's what he did. Like the king was known for lavish
Yeah.
offerings to women. He was a little.
But this would have been like. It would have been like Elon Musk offering that.
Yeah.
It was a degree of wealth.
Yeah, for sure. It was pretty intense. And I was just watching Esther with my kids, the VeggieTales version. And it was actually kind of funny because there
Just
was
so you know, everybody, Rachel's kids are not little.
not little,
Yeah.
not that little. But I mean, when I was a kid,
What's the age range for
VeggieTales,
VeggieTales?
it's like
It can be-
early elementary, probably.
I think the age is 2001.
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean, I think VeggieTales when I was a teenager, like there were kids watching VeggieTales, teenagers that would do it. So because that was
Sure.
fun. Anyways, they got if they did something wrong instead of killing, they got banished to the island of perpetual tickling. So, but they showed.
Is that in the
Is-
Book of Esther?
I don't think
Is that where
so.
Vashti is?
Yes,
Uh,
she's in the
Hmm.
land of perpetual tickling.
This
That's
is
so
the
comfortable.
king's.
I think telling
Former
kids
king.
about death would be better than
Yeah.
perpetual tickling.
Jack was pretty upset. He thought that sounds horrible. But the king's throne room was huge, though, in the story, which I think that's why I brought it up. Which is, I think, in Persian culture, like the king's throne room was really big, and she was hiding, waiting for someone to see her. So it's, I don't know. It's just interesting how it worked out and how it unfolded. And then, that was the other thing. Like, they kind of made it seem like Esther didn't ask right away because of fear coming up. And it just made me think, that's possible. Like, if she didn't ask right away in the king's throne room where she asked them to the banquet, and then she got to the banquet and didn't ask at the first banquet, and then she asked at the second banquet.
Because
I
her
think-
request, again, at the. So there was an initial offer.
Yeah.
And she said, let's have a banquet. Then at that banquet, he goes, you can
What's
have
your
whatever,
request?
you can
Yeah.
have whatever you want. And she says, let's do this again tomorrow.
Yeah. Which I think buttered them up, right? Because she's building a relationship, but I can also see how there might have been some fear involved.
Yep.
Which it all worked
Them
out,
being the
thankfully.
king, and
Yeah,
it was a
Haman.
banquet for two, which is awkward.
A
It's
little.
awkward. And the other person is Haman, who is the villain of the story. This is the person from chapter 3 who was upset at Mordecai, who's Esther's uncle, cousin, neighbor,
cousin,
friends,
cousin, uncle.
yeah, dad.
Raised her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Haman was rising in power and authority,
Mhm.
revered by the king. The end of chapter 2, it's like a whiplash. Mordecai spares the king's life by reporting a plot against him, and then the next words, you turn the page, chapter 3 again. Chapter delineations are not part of the initial writing. So Mordecai, incredible, saved the king's life. Haman rises to authority. It just is a whiplash moment. And Haman demands that everybody bows and curtsies and gives reverence to him, and Mordecai doesn't.
Yeah.
And so makes a decree in chapter 3 that not only it won't make me feel better if Mordecai's dead. I want all of his people, which is the Jews, to be all of them to be killed that are part of the Persian Empire, which was a lot.
Yeah.
All.
Well, that was his decree. Is that all of them?
I know, but I'm saying at that time, every single Jew would have been in the Persian Empire.
There were. This is post Nehemiah, so there is a growing remnant in Jerusalem.
But Jerusalem
that's what I was gonna
under
say,
the
like-
Persian
No,
Empire.
that's true.
It was at least
The
nearby.
Persian Empire was like
It was huge.
almost to Spain.
It was definitely in
And
Iran because
who
they
knows how far
were in
east.
Iran at
Yeah.
this time. So
Yeah, so this was a gigantic declaration, and here let's throw another banquet, and let's make it for two. And the king and Haman, they don't know the connection of Esther to being a Jew or her connection to Mordecai.
Yeah.
And so banquet number 2.
banquet number 2. So they did banquet number 1, and she said, let's do it again. And then banquet number 2 came, and she finally told the king that Haman was planning to kill her people. And she did beg in that moment, if you care for me, then save me, save my people. And he said, who would do that? And she pointed to Haman, and he was so enraged she left. And then this is funny. Haman, begging for his life, he falls on the couch, which she's laying on.
It's like the picture of it. It says that the king came in right as Haman is like throwing his hand up to his forehead and crumbles onto the couch,
which Esther was just laying on. And so the king, begging. And then the king was like, you're going to assault my wife in this house. So the king walks in at the wrong time. And then
the right time.
The right time, wrong time. Yes, for humor. Wrong time for Haman. And then they put something over his head. They escort him out, and I think he was quickly impaled.
Well, they said
put him on the pole.
The pole that he built in his yard. So the pole was built in his yard, and they impaled Haman on the pole that he had built for Mordecai.
The 75-foot long pole.
Yes, which
there's
gruesome.
Again, some
that's not so
question. Like again, I mean, this is just for conversation. If we had to put somebody on a pole that was as tall as a water tower, there's some complications to that. And so again, there's some intentionality.
Yeah.
And again,
but like you have to fight this guy. Like I don't know if you climb a ladder or how you get to the top of a 75-foot pole because that's like 9 people tall, right?
Yeah. Well,
9
who knows how tall it actually was.
12
I think
of
the point of the story is that, or this section is that Haman was going above and beyond trying to display the death of Mordecai. Because Mordecai wouldn't stroke his ego.
And just before this story, he went above and beyond thinking he was going to be honored and wanted to make himself look like a king, basically. Yeah. And then it was actually for Mordecai. Yeah. And that was displayed for everybody, too.
Yeah, the prideful will get what's coming to them.
Which is the heart. Like I would summate what we're talking about in 7 and 8. There's so much in all of this text, but the center of what we're talking about is that God redeems impossible, hard, impasse moments, and that is not necessarily a great thing to drop off as a greeting card for people. Yeah. When somebody's going through the hardest of moments, but there is something really beautiful about having faith that building a pattern in our own lives that the hard things that we're facing are refining, are giving focus, are giving blessing. And probably most people have some degree of narrative in their own life where that was really hard, but I grew during that. I think a lot of people, most people have that narrative, but that does not mean the next hard moment will be fully embraced by me.
No, I mean, it's all hindsight, right? Like you have to look backwards to be able to see any hope, which is something we talked about a little this week. I mean, maybe that's part of next week's discussion is just the importance of remembering and celebrating and what that looks like. And how do you, when you go through a hard time, how do you recognize that you've grown or changed, or it's been, in the end, you actually benefited from it.
Yeah. It's even there is our own experience, but this text was written so that initial readers and us would go, oh, that is a characteristic of God. And so, I mean, that's the, if there was something that I would love to have, is learning, growing, having my faith grow from seeing other people's experiences. And I think it's hard to have that in our own experiences, and then even one step more complicated. But the encouragement is that, this is the fruit of Scripture, is that we would grow from seeing God's character demonstrated in that. And I think it can be a cultural now moment to go, at some degree of worse, to go, well, it's just some story.
Yeah.
But maybe a little bit better is to go, well, God did that for them, but that's not for me. But the desired outcome is that I go, boy, my faith, I'm understanding more about the character of God through even their experience.
Yeah. What do you think, like the people, like the Jewish people that read this story, how was this bringing hope for them?
Well, that's part of the thing that we're really going to talk about next week, is that they made a commitment to this day to remember and celebrate and let it be part of their story. And I think that letting this experience be part of their story, and letting that this experience be part of our story is such an important.
I feel like I've read this, but I can't think of it. When was Esther written? Do we know? Like what the Jewish people were experiencing when it was written, or maybe it was oral.
No, it's
storytelling.
It's in the time frame of Ezra and Nehemiah, so
Okay.
it's at the 100.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just over 100 years after the exile.
I mean, a cynical view of it it's that it was part of propaganda by the Jewish people to get them to return to Jerusalem.
Oh, really?
A lot of the purpose of Esther is about their identity as people and trying to communicate set apart and these things.
And that while they were still very far from Jerusalem, that God was not hadn't forgotten them.
No. Yeah.
Which is such a powerful part of the narrative, is that this could have been a narrative that said, the king of Persia was swooping in to get the people in Jerusalem, and God spared them. But it's an intentional part of the narrative, is that here they are in the capital of the Persian Empire, and God not even being mentioned. It becomes like, it's like there's these bright spots, these highlighted moments of the story that the readers would have gone, God is doing something, even in this place where these are not, even Mordecai and Esther, there isn't any like elevating of their incredible character.
No.
No, they're not.
No,
they're not
it's
really
almost the opposite. Like,
elevated.
they're viewed as like separate from the people that went back to Jerusalem. And
Yep.
Not living exactly that way. And I think too, like just recognizing how tough the moment Esther found herself in, like this wasn't necessarily her choice. Like when we talk about, maybe you were here for a moment like this, like they were looking for beautiful women in the kingdom, and they took the women they saw, and then they were put in this allowed beauty treatments for a year to have basically one night with the king, and one of them was chosen as the wife, and then the rest of them, I mean, like what is their so like it's not an ideal situation for Esther. Like this wasn't all fun. I think we want to, she's the queen, but it's like, no, this was tough. And like thinking of how tough it was, and for her to again choose to lay down her own life for all the Jewish people or willing to do that is pretty huge.
Yeah, because before her initial approaching, right at the beginning of chapter 3, that's where, is it right? Chapter 3, where she says, all right, if I'm going to go for such a time as this, if I'm going to go, you have to fast and pray. And then as she goes, well, I have this resignation. If I'm going to give it a shot, if I die, I die.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just a really tough moment, I think. And just really beautiful. That's all.
Yeah.
Like just to see how tough it was, and then later read the story and go, oh, this gives us some hope.
Yep.
You know.
It really reminded me of Jesus in Luke 18 tells a parable. And one thing that is really powerful about parables is that as Jesus told them, the people hearing them would have had real clear understanding of the different characters, not necessarily as individuals, but just like in generalities. And so Jesus tells a parable about an unjust judge, and everybody hearing the story would have gone, it's kind of like, I don't know,
what judges?
A crooked politician. Everybody goes, "Whoa, I can't imagine that," kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But rather, the judges, they weren't Jews; they were Roman.
Yeah.
People that were hired to be magistrates, to be the issues of justice, handling the issues of justice in a given community. But that was their job, and they could care less about the Jewish people. So what a great thing is that, let me tell you a story about a person who who really, really has a ton of authority and is supposed to protect you and could care less about you. And then, okay, yeah, I get that. And then it says that there was a widow who, again, everybody understood the impact, the fear, the trepidation of being widowed was out of control.
Yeah.
It would just, if you're, actually, it's beautiful that Jesus is giving recognition to a group of people that is marginalized by just bringing them into the story. But they economically, culturally, influence, everything was lost. Everything was just in disarray when you became a widow. And so this story of this nobody coming to a uncaring judge and going, "You need to grant me justice," and so the thing that would have popped up into attention of this is like, wow, this widow was very bold to go to the judge, because she, again, culturally was nobody, but went to the judge, "You need to give me justice." And then it just it shares this narrative of the story, of this presumption that she came over and over and over again, and she came like the two-hand shove to the chest, "You got to grant me justice."
Yeah.
And so this would have grabbed the attention of these hearers, and it's like, wow, how this story is going to end is that the judge is going to smite her, end her. But instead, the story in the parable goes that this unjust judge goes, "I'm going to grant you justice because I'm afraid you're going to attack me," which is the switch of power expectation. And then, like, well, what's Jesus? What is the point of this? And he says, if this unjust judge grants justice, how much more will God, who is just, grant justice to those that he loves, cares, that are his people? And that encapsulating that is really what we see in Esther, is that here's this group of people that were marginalized, had lost position, authority, were in the worst scenario. And even though they weren't perfect and the scenario was so far from it, God granted them justice. That is the character of God.
Yeah.
And we have to be on the lookout for that, but we also have to seek that perspective.
Yeah. I think just recognizing that in this story, people like the Jewish people, Esther, they're the powerless ones in this moment. Haman and the king have all the power, and recognizing that for them to get any justice, for her even to be selected as queen, as a Jewish person. I mean, they didn't know that. All of these things that makes you go, okay, this story is, this is a lot of hope for people that just feel hopeless.
It is in chapter 3 where Haman had rolled dice to determine the day that the people were all going to be exterminated.
And it's a year later.
Yeah.
So
the end. They knew the end of the story.
Yeah.
And then two, on top of that, again, it goes back to, and just as some people have fake deer, some people have pink flamingos as their front yard ornamentation.
Yeah.
And Haman had a pole.
A pole to impale people.
Yep, a pointy pole.
Pointy pole.
And so, they all knew the end of their story, but God is the just judge. And so we see this text from beginning to end is all of this power and strength in the expected, then it being God restoring or giving back all of that power, respect, and authority to his people.
Yeah.
The flip of blessing. And it just is, you come to the end of chapter 10 of this book, all of a sudden it'll be like, wait, this isn't a story about the king and Haman. This is actually a story of here Mordecai is sitting in this place of authority. And how did that happen? It's like that. It would have been so unexpected.
Right. I think too, like, we didn't really go through this a little, but in chapter 8, once Haman, after he's executed, there's still this law in place that, like, the people that hate the Jewish people are going to still attack them and kill them. That didn't go away. And so then the king adds another law that they can defend themselves and stop people that are attacking them. And so, like, not only did, like, they stop Haman, but they stopped the whole plan and were able to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And then that just continued to lead to Mordecai being in second in command, replacing Haman. It's just like the folding. They just are mirrors of each other throughout the whole book. It's really cool.
Greg's wrap up.
I don't have a wrap up.
You don't have, Rich is not here.
Rich is not here, but so that'll be the end. But
You don't have anything?
No.
Nothing more?
It's great.
Oh,
We'll
good.
see you next week for week 5 of Esther. Final week, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Almost done.
Okay.